All right, and we are live. What is up, YouTube and Facebook? It is Dom, creator, host, all the above of Survivor Grand Rapids, Survivor Dearborn, and we are here on this Monday evening to talk about episode 3 that premiered last week, Wednesday, and go over all the stuff that happened. It was over an hour, and we had some new twists, some new turns, and a big blindside for the audience, maybe, but we will get down to that within the next hour or so. We got a nice panel coming on board today. We have 2 Fresh Meat alumni joining us. First, his second time on the panel for this season, we are bringing in Mark from Florida. Mark, how are we doing tonight?
It is hot and humid down here. How are you, Dom?
I'm doing great. It is hot and humid here in Cincinnati, so it's not a contest, but you might have us beat. But
fair. Thanks for having me, though. I appreciate you and all the hard work you put in.
Of course, anytime. It's always great to hear your point of view as our resident Survivor superfan for this era, and getting your insight on this side of the panel for this season. So next up, we are bringing in Mark's rival, actually, from Fresh Meat. Let's hope that they squash the beef already. But without further ado, we are bringing in Addison from Fresh Meat. Addison, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. Live from Lansing today. Watched the episode Sunday. Loved it. I think it's my favorite episode so far, so I'm excited to talk.
Awesome. Well, I am glad that you are here. Beef squash between Mark and Addison, hopefully just for the viewers.
For the most part, yeah. Honestly, I think we were on a podcast together at the end of Fresh Meat.
Ooh.
I think we squashed the beef then.
Maybe.
If I recall correctly. I'm pretty sure my only other podcast appearance was with Mark again. So
we also were the main cameraman on the front yard, so I think we sucked it up back then too.
Yeah. So just for the audience, on the same page. I'm not sure if anybody was tuning into that, but we are here to talk about episode 3. It is our 3rd episode of Bad Blood, and it was a brutal one. It was probably our one of our toughest rounds that we had to put on a crew level, let alone for these castaways. A lot went down this episode, so let's just dive right into it. We are immediately thrown into the Vendetta tribe, and the Vendetta tribe is just fresh off another tribal council. They had just voted out Drew for his scheming that he did on episode 1 and 2, and the slate is kind of clean. Nobody is on anybody's radar, and nobody really knows how to move forward from that. So I'm going to ask Addison, somebody who was in the backyard that has experienced the trials and tribulations of having to go to tribal council back to back, right off the bat in season 5, Fresh Meat. How are you sympathizing with the Vendetta tribe?
Oh, I feel for him, dude. Losing and going to tribal council and losing and going to tribal council sucks. It's just degrading, and it kind of brings your morals down. Even though it does fire you up to try and win again, it's sort of a snowball effect, because you even lose a member, and it's okay, now we're down against a larger group of people in the competitions. And I feel even worse for this year's backyard losing tribe, because ours, when I played, at least they weren't really close. We kind of got smashed. But the Green Tribe is really just losing by a hair over and over again. So I feel for him, definitely.
Yeah, it's been tough to see on, just them continuously losing. We'll get to those losses later in the episode today, but just right off the bat, they've lost 3, a reward challenge and 2 immunity challenges. They voted off to Chase and Drew, and they are going into this round very hesitant. We had 2 near unanimous votes with Chase and Drew, and the lines are still not really drawn on that tribe. And Addison, that is kind of a reflection of how the Cascade tribe was on Fresh Meat. Who kind of stands out on Vendetta tribe in the best position, and how they approach this round, kind of right off the bat?
Right off the bat, honestly, I feel I thought Grace was in the best position. I thought she had a lot of sympathy, post Drew fake vote debacle, and she had a lot of momentum going for her after being targeted by Drew and then that backfiring on him. So I thought going into the episode, I thought Grace was in the best position.
Yeah, she makes a note that she feels like she's in the middle. A lot of people are coming to talk to her and kind of start these alliances rolling. And she feels it's best to kind of play that middle position. And I think that's a really good position to be in. But when your tribe is dwindling down to like 7 people, Mark, when is that, is that a good spot to be in that early in the game with having voted that many people out to be in a position in the middle, or should you be gravitating towards one side or the other?
I think it's such an interesting balance because they mentioned it a couple times in the episode. They've had to form bonds. They've had to go through things that the front yard people haven't had to deal with yet. They're just kind of sitting around doing whatever they want to do. Whereas the backyard people, like, they're having to have these serious conversations. They're having to advance their game. They're having to really develop these bonds and trusts and follow through with these bonds and trust. So I think it's a catch-22 because you're losing somebody that you may put full faith into, but then you also are showing at least tribal lines. Even if they're not following with you, you can see your place in the tribe. I think John did a really good job in this episode, not to get too far ahead, of kind of understanding when everything happened down the line. Oh, I kind of know my place in this tribe. I kind of expected it to happen, and it would be a complete blindside if the yellow tribe were to have lost. So it's a catch-22 because you never want to lose. You're putting yourself at risk, but then you also know where you stand and you can adapt and adjust based off that.
Yeah, John on the Vendetta tribe kind of acknowledges where his spot is. He says, you can't really put the toothpaste back in the tube once it's out. He offered his name up for tribal the previous round, and he knows like his name is on the chopping block. And I feel like that kind of plays a factor when we get to that anti-reward challenge. But another good player that I think is on a good spot is James. I think James had a pretty good read of where things were going. He had a good read on Grace, like kind of right off the bat, that he either needs to get on the Grace train or be really aware of that. I think that mindset is also a good spot to be in for James. Any thoughts on that, Addison? I guess on James's spot.
Yeah, I feel like James had a really, really strong episode in episode 2. He had a great, he had a great read on Drew, and then he came into this episode and you were right, he did have a good read on Grace. But he was the only one that like seemed like undecided about Grace. Everybody else kind of seemed like on Grace's page. So I found that really interesting. Among all the players, he seemed the most uncertain about his own position when I watched it this episode.
Interesting take. So we go from the Vendetta tribe, in all their uneasiness after that tribal council, and we head to the Vengeance tribe with even more uneasiness despite not going to tribal council. We are immediately hit with a nice parade of sunburns between Sam, Tyler, and Josh. Mark, I know you were out on exile. You had a nice little sunburn. I guess question for you, for Mark, what were the elements like on the crew side of things and watching it again on the screen? Like, are you traumatized at all reliving this? Like I was editing it.
I'm thinking back to the exile down the line that Hannah and Tyler went out to in this episode. And I'm just like, why do I not remember that? I lived at exile this entire weekend, intentionally by Tom. He didn't want to be around me. I'm just kidding. But I'm like, why do I not remember that? And I'm like, oh wait, I literally had like heat poisoning and I was like sitting in the basement trying to cool down. Like, it was terrible. And you just feel so bad. Like, I can't imagine, because I remember last year we were on the winning side consistently day one, and it was raining. We were under a little like cover, like no big deal. Everything was fine. I can't imagine dealing with that, just the antagonizing weather aspect, and then also having to do the strategy, vote people out. Like, it's got to be, Addison said, just demoralizing to no end.
Yep.
Yeah, it was a rough day, and this is you can't really see it on screen. I know people keep repeating it. I keep repeating it on the podcast, but also like as the host, it's a really hot season. It was tough out there, and you see it with the sunburns. It's evident on their faces. You see it as our cameras start to get a little bit foggy from all the condensation and the humidity in the air. So it's something that we just did not expect, and this was the hardest day that I have ever had to film and do for the season. So kind of going back into the game, Tyler mentions in his confessional that the water well is the good place to go to not only rehydrate, but also to canoodle and to get on the same page. So going into this episode, Tyler is already kind of in an alliance with Eli and Josh. They're pretty locked in, it seems. And then they bring in Zoe. And so we're down at the water well, and Tyler's talking to Sam. It was explained in episode 1 that Sam and Tyler have been friends since kindergarten, but they're trying to like hold back a little bit. And this was kind of their first conversation that they had together. So Addison, as a former Grand Rapids, team member in Cascade, seeing Tyler rally up these Grand Rapids people, what are your thoughts right now with that conversation between Tyler and Sam?
I liked it. I wish I had kind of taken that approach when I played. I was a big fan of him trying to get the Grand Rapids people together and get a Grand Rapids person to the end. I am a little on edge about his play style right now. The alliances, I think it's very fun to watch. It's like maybe my favorite part of the episode, entertainment wise, but from like a gameplay perspective, I feel like Tyler is like maybe putting his foot in his mouth a little bit with like over strategizing and drawing these lines and alliances. That's kind of one of the reasons I find it so entertaining. I mean, the Yellow Tribe doesn't have to vote anybody out, don't have to face any adversity, and there's just constant worrying about alliances and where the lines are. And for seemingly, I mean, maybe just to play the game, but they don't have to vote anyone out, at least so far up until the beginning of episode 3. And even in this beginning of episode 3, they haven't gotten to the challenge yet. So it still seems like strategizing for strategizing's sake, if you ask me.
Yeah, one of my favorite things to like edit, and I'm not sure if the audience kind of caught on to it, but it was one of my favorite things to rewatch is how Tyler has this just like zone in on Magingo and Brooklyn alliance that he is convinced off of a brief interaction that they had at a reward challenge at the very beginning of the season. He's convinced that they are locked, that they are rallying troops against him, and that they might even have an idol in the mix. And so when he's telling Sam about this, and Sam's just like, well, what other alliance? And Tyler goes, it's like, what's the alliance? And Tyler starts going like, I know it's Magingo. I'm not sure about Brooklyn. I'm not sure about Luke. I'm not sure about Samantha. It's like all of this. He just lists the entire tribe.
But he knows it's Magingo. He's sure about Magingo.
It's against him. And that's been the most bewildering thing for me to edit, because not only is Tyler pushing this Magingo agenda onto Sam, and eventually he mentions it to Josh and Eli. Josh and Eli are aligning with Magingo through Zoe. And it's like she's actually part of his alliance and he doesn't even know it. So Mark, as I feel like I'm talking to the two best people or representatives of paranoid gameplay from Fresh Meat. As a veteran of being on the front yard, being on a winning tribe, Mark, can you put yourself in Tyler's shoes? And what are your thoughts on this? Either over strategizing, or is he in the right to be able to do this?
I watched Tyler's game and he's doing it better than I did it, but I feel like he's in the exact position that I was this time last year. You're on the winning tribe. You're out there. You want to be the strategic person that plays the game. You literally can't. And then I just remember going out there talking to Kyle, and I'm like, hey, this person found an idol, and I'm trying to get Kyle on board with stuff. And Kyle's like, what's an idol? And I kind of have to talk him through this stuff. And I'm like, I feel like I'm out here playing chess and he's playing checkers, but I need to play checkers to be able to play the game with everybody else. And it's so interesting, the dynamics here, where he is kind of just I have this base of people, but I'm having this conversation with Sam, who doesn't even know the game started at this point. And it's just so interesting to see it all happening. And that he's putting a target on his back because he is the person that's trying to start stuff. But then at some point, he needs to make sure he's setting himself up. So for success down the line. And it's just such an interesting position for him to be put in, because he has these pre-existing relationships. He feels like he can rely on them. He's trying to mix and mingle with other people. And then he's also trying to put targets out there. And it's so much to manage. And I feel like not anybody else is starting to play just yet. So he's at this place where he's so far ahead, but also putting in a gigantic target on his back. And it just, I don't know, it feels so much like what I did to myself last year too.
Eli is in a good position, I feel like. I feel like he's kind of, his confessionals lately seem to be very similar in the sense like he's like, you know, it's very quiet. Like I want to be strategizing. These people don't really know where the game is at. Like are they're either playing super well or they just don't know that it started. But I feel like he's playing a little bit more reserved. And Tyler is he's peacocking in the way that Sam says it. And he's playing this loud, flamboyant game. But I do think there are connections there on Vengeance that even if they do lose, I think he's at least in control of the votes for one more round. So that is where, you know, we are at, you know, Vengeance. And then we go to our first ever anti-reward challenge, as we call it. This was something that we were really excited about in the production side of things to kind of shake up the game somehow like we've never shaken it up before. And basically, we told the castaways that that's what they were playing for. The winners just win, and the losers have to deal with something that's not so great. And so we played this, like the challengers go in and they do this challenge and they end up having to vote out, the Vendetta loses, and then they have to vote out somebody right there on the spot. And they end up going for John. And so John's in our comments right now. And he said everyone was playing chess and checkers and he's playing Hello Kitty Island Adventure. So
can we also point out he changed his YouTube picture in the past 2 comments in the past like 5 minutes.
Profile picture update for John. So yeah, before we even get into like that whole dynamic, I really, really want to shout out our crew for this one. So a little bit behind the scenes for the people tuning in. This was a challenge that was like we came up with within 20 minutes. And that was all from our challenge coordinator, season 1 and season 4 alumni, John Urbanek. John, our original challenge was a gross food eating challenge where the contestants would have to run down, eat a gross food and run back. And then their partner would have to go down first, you know, tribe to do that or gets a point or whatever. And the food that we had was pretty gnarly. We had some, I think we ended up having like some balut. That was something that we flew in for those Survivor super fans out there. And so we had some gross food ready to go. But we made a judgment call because we realized how hot it was and we didn't want people throwing up and becoming more dehydrated. So I told John my concerns and John was like, nope, I got it. Came up with that challenge within 20 minutes. We had it set up and we were ready to go. And it was quite the doozy. So Vendetta ends up losing. And I also want to make a note that Vendetta got screwed on this one too, because they were right next to the train tracks. So when someone would hit a tennis ball, the ball would fly into the train tracks and poor Allie would be taken around in the train tracks to get it. Whereas the Vengeance tribe just got to pick it up off the ground, start from the beginning. And that's, I believe, how they extended their lead at the beginning. So they just got the short end of the stick. And a lot of this is just random placement that we don't foresee on the production side of things. But that's a shout out to John for coming up with the challenge. And I'm sorry, Vendetta, for being screwed on that side of things. But fast forward to where we are at with the vote out. And so I believe the Vendetta tribe had to vote somebody out. And I believe the votes were Hannah, John, and I think it was Aubrey voted for John to stay. So they voted for Carrie, and then everybody else voted for John to leave. And so that was I think it was a 4-3 vote. And John was surprised, maybe. I don't know. He's a Survivor super fan. I think he saw it coming. He said in his TikTok recap yesterday on his page that he was expecting it to come. But from Mark, from a Survivor super fan POV from you, what was it like kind of seeing that all play out? I know you hosted a watch party in Florida. What was that reaction like?
John is very, very, and I'm not trying to boost his ego because I know he's in the chat, but he is a very large fan favorite around here. He is one of probably the 2 or 3 most hyped people that people see when they get on screen, including myself. But I think it's so interesting that people are just so quick to ignore what's happening at Exile. they understand that people are coming back. They're like, I assume this person's lying to me. And then they come back and they're just like, oh, it's fine. We're just going to vote this other person out too. And I think the last vote was obviously telling, with John putting himself up as like whatever you want to call it, as a volunteer, as tribute, as you put it in the episode. But it's just so interesting, the thought process, and kind of like, I don't know. I don't get where Green is coming from with that kind of vote, when you're like, here's a clear and apparent opportunity to get rid of a potential twist in the game. Why are we not taking advantage of that?
Yeah, that's a great point. John also in the chat said, too late. His ego is already astronomical. So
we're fully aware.
Hyped him up a little bit. But yeah, that's a great point. So Carrie, to recap a little bit, she comes back from exile with an idol that is good for 2 tribal councils, and she barely escapes that vote and gets to stay on Vendetta. Now, they return back to camp. They have to talk about the elephant in the room. Very obvious that some people did vote for Carrie. And that was part of the reward. Not only did they have to vote somebody out, but they have to deal with the repercussions of having to break up their tribe a little bit more. And so Carrie, gives her explanation about what happened at exile, and, tries to, or is just aware that she is out on the outs, it seems like. So Addison, what are your thoughts of where Carrie's mindset is at coming into this tribe?
If I was her, I would be pretty alarmed and like ready to use that idol. Because when you come back from exile, you've been away from the tribe. The tribe's probably talking about what you're doing at exile. So there's sort of an immediate target put on your back sometimes when you just go to exile. But she came back and she handled it really, really well. Not only did she do well at exile by getting that idol, she was able to keep that hidden from her tribe with no blemishes, it seemed. Everyone seemed to believe her. She was very sociable and confident in her white lie. Well, I don't know about white, but in her telling of what happened and saying she didn't have anything. So coming back, I feel like it sort of puts a target on your back, but I think she handled it extremely well and put herself into a great position coming back by keeping the idol. Obviously she has it, and then sort of disarming anyone's superstitions or paranoia about the exile.
Yeah. Somebody else that came back. So it's not just having Carrie navigate those, conversations for her. It's about how the tribe interacts with her coming back. And somebody that I thought did that very well was like Aubrey. And so Aubrey comes in and starts asking her questions, asking, in a very candid way, like, did Josie, what are their tribe like? What information did you get? And she's trying to use Carrie more as a tool to get that information on like where, not only just like, can she trust Carrie, but how much information is Carrie willing to give up? And I think that was a great kind of subtle social play from Aubrey and how she went about, Carrie this episode.
Can I touch on that point real quick too?
Yeah.
Something that I thought really stood out to me about Aubrey, and knowing her as a person, I know she's a very sweet, genuine person that wants to make sure everybody's like taken care of. But her coming back and handing out all these Dr. Peppers to people, like, that's not a small thing. Because if you give somebody something, they're like, oh, this person's so kind and thoughtful, that kind of puts your guard down for a second. And I feel like that is something she does very well, to come off and use the fact that she's like a younger female to her advantage of like, oh, I'm a sweet person that people can trust. And her doing that just accentuated that too. So that was really, really like a subtly good move in this episode, when she was like, hey, take these. It's completely okay.
Yeah, I completely agree. And we'll see if John's oatmeal squares also have the same effect that Aubrey's Dr. Peppers did. So speaking of which, we go over to Vengeance and we see Josie immediately hop into her exile tale in very extreme detail, down to the nitty gritty of, everything out there. And absolutely nobody believes her, it seems. She tells pretty much the exact story of what happened, saying that, basically the prizes that were up for grabs. But the one thing she did say was that Carrie didn't take anything and that they both didn't take anything. But her tribe doesn't believe her. So, Addison, if somebody were to come back and say that story like that, the way that Josie did, like, what are your thoughts? Like, are they validated in that? Like, what were your thoughts watching that back?
I think they're pretty validated. I think she got kind of caught up in strategizing, and then sort of the cat got her tongue a little bit when she was trying to tell her story. Um, I didn't fully understand why she was attempting to like cover for Carrie and then also like leave
Cover
the
under the
door open
bus.
that Carrie could have an idol. I thought that was a very, very odd play. And the way she told it, I think she may have known that too, or been like nervous about telling that story because the cat got her tongue a little bit, and just even in the speech, um, she flusters a little bit. And I think other people caught on and could sense that from her that something wasn't quite right with her story. So I definitely got that as a viewer and thought that the comments from the other players were validated.
That is one of the biggest mysteries that I have as well. Carrie or Josie does not give an explanation in her confessionals about why she throws Carrie under the bus after just covering up for her. And
Yep.
it is, I don't know. The one thing that I could maybe see is that if she says maybe Carrie has an idol, or, the way she hammers it home and, says maybe like she might, like drills it in that if people get word that Carrie played an idol, then her story backs up. That's the
Yeah.
only thing that I could foresee, but I think that's a massive 4D chess move that doesn't really need to be considered when you're trying to like provide as little information and answer as many questions as possible. So
Yeah.
before Josie can even before her tribe can even process what's happening, we get a is anybody home from John walking down the hill with Mark accompanied him. They are coming down, and John lets his new tribe mates know that he is now a part of their tribe, and they are just bewildered by this news. They cannot fathom the fact that the tribe is now 11 to 6 now, right? Or is
Yep.
11 to 7?
7.
11 to 7. They cannot fathom that. And there's a lot of hesitancy, like right off the bat. So John's telling his story. He's coming in with, pretty open arms, like, providing information here and there, pretty good spirits. And they are all hesitant. Luke is worried that he's going to be put on some targets. I think a lot of people are like kind of sizing John up as like, if we lose, we can just vote him out. Mark, what were your thoughts on how John, not only approached coming to Vengeance, but the tribe's reception to his arrival?
It's interesting because I feel like if you're a strategic player, you see John coming as like either one of two options. He is an easy vote out. He's a tribe unifier. We haven't gone to tribal yet. First boot is just to kick John off. Or John's just been jaded by the 7 people that are remaining over there. If I can get John in with me, that's a loyal number for the rest of the game. And I think it's going to be somebody who can take that and run with it, with the sense of like, this is somebody who is an intelligent human being. I'm not trying to boost his ego any more than I already have, but an intelligent human being who would be a loyal and good person to have closely aligned with. And I look at someone like Luke, who may not be in like Tyler's like core group, but also is like partnered with him in the game. And I'm like, why are you not like taking off and running with him at this point in the game? Like, why are we not immediately jumping on that fact that we have some sort of connection, whether it be a loose straw or not? Why am I not using this to my advantage to further myself? So it's going to be so interesting when the yellow tribe has to get strategic in this game to see how he is either taken advantage of or cut off at like a loose cord like that.
Yeah, it was fun seeing him come in because it was he has the mind to be able to like play that. It's the worst case scenario, I feel like, for every other player but John. And I feel like John is able to navigate that, pretty well. And him being on a winning tribe, I think he's going to be in a good spot. He got to sit out at the immunity challenge and let the tribe kind of carry him to his first win. And I think that was a good spot for him to be in. And that was probably the best thing to happen to him, because if he stayed on Vendetta, I don't know about his odds. And I think John would probably say the same for that.
Yeah. Can I touch on that?
Yeah, go
Sorry,
for
I
it.
didn't mean to interrupt you.
You're fine.
I was kind of on the same page as you, where I thought this was a huge blessing in disguise for John, specifically because of what you just said. The Green Tribe Vendetta, they're starting to dwindle down, and there's no more easy votes. Whereas since no one has been voted out of the yellow tribe, there's likely, at least through 2 rounds of gameplay, somebody that people are thinking about that they want to get out. So John really just has to come in and not make himself an enemy, which he's very charismatic. I think he's going to do just fine. But I think this was kind of a blessing in disguise because not only does he go to the bigger tribe, he goes to the winning tribe that has momentum, and he's off the tribe where there's no more easy votes. So I
And
think this was like actually a huge, huge blessing for John.
Green Tribe is also a lot of passive players so far where they're like, let's get a group consensus and make a vote. Whereas Yellow Tribe is all these, like you got your Josie, your Tyler, your Eli, you got all these people who are trying to scheme, and you can easily just fall into the mix and slide on through to the merge of that type of tribe. So I think for someone like John, charismatic, likable person for the most part, not trying to boost his ego, done say that for the night, I'm sorry. It's a good position to be in for the rest of the game.
John's gotten a lot of compliments from this panel today. So, but I mean, well deserved, John. I think you got the episode title this round with your Sure Jan, and I think you have a good relationship with the Green Tribe. You gave them your oatmeal squares, and you're entering Vengeance Tribe, in good spirits. So they're already crumbling. It's just up to you to be able to find those cracks. And I'm speaking directly to John because he's again in the comments. So. But let's fast forward to that immunity challenge. Another absolute blowout for the Vendetta tribe. They lose yet again after doing the slip and slide challenge, which was a fun one to film. We had a cameo from Kyle from Fresh Meat. That was a blast. That got everybody giggling. That was something that we really needed on the crew side of things too. So shout out to Kyle for that one. But we see the Vendetta tribe crumble, and that was a tough one to edit as well. The line was very far back, and we definitely should have moved it up closer. A lot of those rounds went on for maybe 5-6 minutes. I know at the very end, Carrie and Brooklyn were doing it for about 6 minutes, and Brooklyn was gassed at the end. That was when Juliana runs up and gives her an ice pack because she was about to crash. And again, very testament to the heat and the heat exhaustion that we had. But regardless, Vendetta loses, and Vengeance sends Hannah to Exile Island, and she chooses Tyler. Addison, friends with Hannah and Tyler.
Yep.
In the game, what are your thoughts on that pick?
I thought it was risky, but a good move. It was smart but risky because most people in that game are aware that Hannah and Tyler are friends. That's like one step below taking Josh. It's someone you're already aligned with. It gives Hannah a great opportunity to bolster a relationship that she already has with somebody on the other side, sort of get a foot in the door with the other tribe. I thought it was smart, but overall quite risky.
I did too. I thought it was very risky. I was pretty surprised as the host when she did that, but I think it worked out for her more than it did for Tyler, if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
Tyler only needed information that Allie was safe on her side, and all Hannah said was, yeah, Allie's killing it. And then Tyler exposed that they didn't trust Josie. He exposed some more information to her about just like the tribe dynamics and offered up an alliance to her to go to the end. And Hannah took that and ran with it. So not only does she have, she lost her vote in that slide puzzle, but she has an alliance with Tyler that she didn't even have to ask for. And she has information that the other tribe is untrusting of Josie, and to be on, the lookout for Carrie's story as well. So I think that was a big successful and not successful, trip to exile for Hannah, where meanwhile back at camp, chaos erupts where we have they're trying to figure out what to do. We don't have any solid alliances besides Adrian and Grace really established, and Adrian throws out Grace's name seemingly out of nowhere, very much out of nowhere. I have no idea again how that happened. One of the biggest question marks of this season. So Mark, watching that go down, what are your thoughts on Adrian's betrayal of Grace?
This is just the season where players turn on either allies or other players and then run back to them and say, oh, I'm so sorry I did that. Let's get back together. I don't understand. From it, I understand that Adrian isn't fully like versed on like Survivor and maybe like the social politics of it. But to run back to her and be like, hey, I'm so sorry. Let's work up a new plan. and think Grace is 100% going to be on board with that. It was so interesting, and I still, to the life of me, don't understand. Aside from Grace being a likable person, she hasn't betrayed anyone. She hasn't like done anything necessarily wrong. She kind of started like the Drew vote, but everybody was on board with that in the end. So I don't understand why she was kind of the name that came out of a hat. And once again, Carrie came back with no explanation. Hannah's coming back telling us, "Oh, I lost a vote." So clearly she tried to do something strategic, but we're just going to take out the likable person. It's just interesting how Green is kind of turning from this, let's all get one consensus vote on an easy vote, somebody that we can all get aligned with, to let's vote out the nicest person on the team that everybody feels like they can work with too. So strategy wise, I don't fully understand, but it's just interesting to kind of see it develop.
Yeah. My read on it was that it was just one of those, switches that we see go off where a tribe is losing and they immediately just shift from the perspective of what's best for my game to we need to start winning challenges. And from that perspective, Grace didn't really participate, but also because Vendetta was losing before Grace would be able to participate. So there's really there's arguments that could be made on both sides. And so Adrian, jump in full stock in on Carrie, who just got back from Exile Island, who says that she's good at puzzles. And I guess puzzles are the big thing that people are scared of. So we need a puzzle person on the bench. We saw that with Claire last season. Maybe Carrie's the new Claire. So that's the read that I got off of it. And so this is where we see the players really play. And I think everybody on Vendetta really, really shined this round, minus Adrian. But to highlight some of them, and if anybody wants to speak on this, let me know. You have Carrie, who's navigating this, her name's out there. She's keeping calm. She's keeping, pretty centered and listening to everybody's pitches and, not really doing too much work, but is involved in these conversations. You have James, who is also involved in these conversations, deciding where his vote needs to go. You have Aubrey, who the minute she realizes she's not on the chopping block from her performance at the challenge, starts pushing that Grace vote pretty quickly, and tries to get people on board. She does a lot of convincing for Adrian and a lot of convincing for James. And then including that, you have Allie, who's sharing that information with Grace that, she can trust her name's out there, and that they can work together. And then you have Grace, who goes into prime time scramble mode and immediately, accepts Adrian's apology. And I think that's the best case that you can do, because she still needs him as a number. And she pitches that they can link up with their partners on the other tribe at the merge or at a swap, and that they can work together. And that, almost sells Adrian on that, including the fact that Hannah, a returnee with a 10-year relationship on the other tribe, comes back from exile after missing a majority of the canoodling with no vote, manages to skate by. Nobody drops her name out, and she's all set, chilling. I think this was, a tribe high. Everybody was playing perfectly. So any thoughts on that between you guys? I would love to hear your opinions on that.
Let me ask Addison a question, if that's okay, because something that piqued my interest. If you're Carrie in this situation, because you were somebody who had to go into tribals knowing your name was somewhat floated out there with an idol in your pocket, what is that pre-tribal like for you? And putting yourself into her shoes, what conversations do you need to have to make that determination if you're playing it or not? Because that's such an interesting perspective to put yourself in Carrie's shoes.
I think Carrie handled the situation better than me, for sure. When I played, my thought process was, let me make sure there's another name out there. And my thought process was, if I am not 100% sure of who it's going to be, I'll play the idol. But I was pretty certain that it would be down to one or two people that weren't me, and that's why I would hold on to the idol. And I still would probably follow that strategy. I'm not sure where Carrie's mindset is. If I was in her shoes in this specific situation, I definitely would have played it, because you came back from exile. That kind of immediately puts a target on your back. Like I said, I would have been probably nervous to all hell and played it. But props to Carrie for having balls of steel.
That was my thought too on that, because I'm she knows it's only good for 2 tribals, so it's this time or next time. I know my name's floated out there. if I'm hearing Grace's name pop up out of nowhere and I'm Carrie who missed the whole strategic session the last time, that sounds like a decoy vote to me, because the only other logical person for me is John, who's on the other tribe now. So I'm just like baffled that she didn't play it in that session, and genuinely props to her. That was my biggest takeaway here too.
Yeah. One of the big hesitancies I feel like Carrie had, and people have been asking me about, like, how did she hold it, or like what was her reasoning for not playing it? And to note, she didn't want to, like, the negative to playing it would be that she would get back to camp and basically, be the next target because she lied about coming back from exile with having an idol. And so I feel like it's such a double-edged sword with that. And I think she also played it very, very well. And we will see how she navigates after this tribal. But during this tribal, the vote spread was so thin. It was a 3 to 2 to 1 vote, which is something we don't see a lot in Survivor. We had 3 votes for Grace, with James, Aubrey, and Carrie voting for Grace, Allie and Grace voting for Carrie, and then Adrian burning his vote onto Hannah. Seeing how that played out, Addison, what are your thoughts on that that vote?
I thought it was nuts, and I kind of loved watching it, and I loved that it was the first vote that we had that wasn't so unanimous. Adrian pulling his vote astray, just like giving Hannah a stray vote, I thought was very odd, but I found it quite entertaining, and I really liked it from like a watching perspective. He basically just like lit the powder keg for the vote and then walked away, and said, "Here, you guys figure this out," which I don't know how it's gonna go for his game long term, but it was definitely a bit of a power move on Adrian's side. I was not there filming this, so as a spectator, I honestly did think Carrie was going to play her idol, just because that's what I would have done, and I knew that it was going to be close. So I really liked watching this vote. Carrie not playing it was huge. Grace getting voted out was huge. I don't know. This was a crazy vote from
The game
a
early.
spectator perspective.
It shook up the game early. Grace was my winner pick, and I'm afraid I might have jinxed her going into the game. I think she played a hell of a game, for being a pre-merger, and going out in the first day. Typically, we do see a lot of these players, like, they go out either blindsided or, I think Grace had a good sense of where the game was. She made some big moves in the 3 rounds that she was in there, and she played hard, and that's all I can ask for a player. And Grace is not with us tonight. Grace is currently abroad in Paris for the Olympics. She is traveling abroad and was unable to make our podcast tonight. So we will try to get something set up where she is going to do a deep dive of her game with me. And we'll go over like her moves, what her thoughts are later on, whenever we get that all set up. So for those viewing, stay tuned. We'll get that up, hopefully within the next week and a half or so. But because the Olympics are going on, we wanted to do something fun on our side of things. It's a quick little roundtable discussion that we came up with before hopping on. That before we get into our power players, we wanted to create our own Olympic team for Survivor. So if Survivor had the Olympics, who is the best physical player, who's the best strategic player, and who's the best social player that we would be sending to these Olympics, as well as the best confessionalist. So we have assembled a little team. We're going to pick one boy and one girl. We're going to do, each one's going to kind of take a hit of their, specialty. So to kind of start off, Mark, for your, strategic side of things, out of all the players of Bad Blood thus far, from what we've seen in the 3 episodes, what man and what woman are you picking for your best strategic game Olympic team?
So for the man, my mind was split kind of between John and Eli, but I think I leaned toward Eli in this situation. I feel like at this point in the game, Eli just feels like a snake in the grass, ready to bite anybody. And he's just kind of like there. He's involved in every relationship, and he's thinking so much, but he's just like waiting for it to be in the right position, making a lot of good alliances and stuff. So Eli for the guy. For the girl, I was kind of toss up between Hannah and Aubrey, and I think I ended up going with Aubrey because I think she's put herself in a really good position in that you see her in every single conversation, in the important conversations, and she's having an impact on the game, but you never hear her name once. She was just very much thinking about the relationship building and all those aspects, but not putting herself as the target. And I think strategically she's setting herself up for the long game rather than a short game too.
Nice. Addison, what about you for Aubrey and Eli are officially going to the Survivor Olympics for the strategic game. For our social game, who is going to the Survivor Olympics, Addison?
I have a question about these rules. Do I need to pick a separate player? Are those two off the board?
Ooh. We can have multi-sport athletes, I would say.
Okay. Then for my female pick social game, I am going to take Aubrey. For honestly, a lot of the same reasons that Mark just stated, but I think the game is more rooted in her social aspect than in her strategic aspect. There's no like super hard strategizing. She just has a insanely high social instinct, and she's navigating the social boundaries of the game very well. Like Dom brought up, she was able to pry into Carrie's experience at Exile Island without really causing any abrasion in that relationship, which is really impressive. She's been able to be in all of the important conversations without any abrasion. Everyone still really likes her, and she isn't on anybody's radar, and she's in every important conversation. So for those reasons, I think her social game deserves to go to the Olympics. And then on the boys' side, or the men's side, I'm going to take John. I think John is very, very eloquent and charming. I didn't know when we were watching that he was was it speech or debate coach? I learned that through one of the profession, subtitles, and I was like, that really checks out. He is very eloquent. I don't know. He is very, very social. He's extremely likable. And part of this also has to do with crew bias. Little behind the scenes, all of the cameramen really liked filming John because he would flirt with the camera and he was the most confident by far speaking to the camera. And so maybe there's a little bit of crew bias there, but I would take John to go to the Social Olympic Games.
He was always backlit when I was filming him. That was my pride and joy of the season too. You're welcome, John.
Well, John and Aubrey, you are heading to the Olympics for the social game aspect of it. And I will be taking the physical category. And I think it's, kind of goes without saying. My picks are both Brooklyn and Luke. I think Brooklyn has dominated almost every aspect or every challenge that we've done so far. It was a tough cut between her and Allie. I think Allie has been the only person that gets consistent points on the board and is consistent in challenges for Vendetta. But Brooklyn, after that anti-reward challenge showing, putting her body on the line, getting those, catching those balls and winning it out against Carrie in that slip and slide, she deserves her spot on the board. And then Luke, just a physical specimen. He has been dominant in a lot of these challenges. You didn't really get to see it a lot in the anti-reward challenge, but he was a reason why a lot of those tennis balls ended up in the railroad tracks. He was knocking them down. He was getting air and just knocking them down. So Luke and Brooklyn are going for the physical game aspect of things. And just kind of collectively, we can all just, name who's going for our confessional side of things. Who's going to be maybe narrating these Olympic Survivor games? Who has been giving the best confessionals right now? And Mark, who would you, out of the entire cast, what one person would you pick to give our confessionals or narrate them?
It's hard not to pick John, but I do want to give Zoe her props too. I think she is a phenomenal confessionalist. So she is in there, but I think John he blows it away.
All right. John going for social and confessional for Mark. Addison, what about you? Who's been given the best confessional so far?
I like Eli's confessionals. I filmed a lot of his, again, maybe a little crew bias there, But when he gives his confessionals, it's super clear. You can see where his mind's at, where his strategy is at. Um, and it's clear that he has both a social and a strategy game in his confessionals. And I think he's able to separate the two. He's able to strategize very hard without socializing to others that he is strategizing very hard.
Nice. And I'll go with Zoe. I think Zoe gives some great confessionals, and I would love to see her, narrate some other people's games. It would be great to see. So there you have it. I hope everybody had fun listening to that side of things. But before we clock out, we still have to go over the power players. I know we've discussed a lot of players this episode recap. So without further ado, Mark, who is going to be your third place power player for this week?
My third place this week, I would put Tyler. I think he is obviously a leader within his tribe. He is doing a lot of strategic work with putting a slight target on his back. He has an advantage now. And I think that advantage is a really good thing that not a lot of people are going to know about 100%. And I'm curious to see next week how he presents what happened at Exile to his tribe. But I think he had a good episode in developing relationships and strategy.
Nice. Solid point for Tyler. What about you, Addison?
I'm taking Aubrey in the third spot. I thought her social game was fantastic. You guys brought up some good points. I didn't notice the Dr. Pepper thing, but that is a very good point. That's something small that I didn't notice. And then, yeah, being a part of all the important conversations, getting the Grace vote traction after it had been thrown out, and just really strengthening her social bonds while contributing to the vote out, I think is really impressive.
Yeah. In kind of the same vein, I have James at my number 3. I think James was he was in the swing vote position and not wanting to go to rocks. I think he went with the best that he could going for Grace, but I don't think he's in a bad position. I don't think he pissed off the other side at all, who kept, who wanted to keep Grace in the game. And I think he's still sitting pretty solidly in the middle. He had some great reads. And I don't know if it was necessarily beneficial for him to get Grace out. I think it was good for him to be included in the conversation, have his name not brought up at all, and ultimately be that deciding vote for who was going to go home. So James is getting my third spot. My 2 spot is somebody that I've been flipping back and forth between 1 and 2, but I ultimately settled on number 2 for Carrie for this week. I think Carrie had an uphill battle this episode. Carrie comes back from exile. She makes that alliance with Josie. However, they get back to camp. Carrie says her side of things, and Josie kind of bombs her side of things. But Carrie is, narrowly escapes being voted out by John, or John going to the other tribe. And she, is doing okay with getting back into the group. When her name is on the line, she keeps calm, she keeps collected, and she holds that idol, which is insane. Like is insane. On a 3 to 2 to 1, there's no wiggle room there. It just took Hannah not having her vote, or Hannah having her vote from exile to tie that vote up, and Carrie held it. So the only reason she's not number 1 is because she was in so much danger, but man, did she skirt by that. So props to Carrie for this round. She's not number 1 for me, but she is number 2, getting 3 points from me this episode. Mark, what about you for number 2?
I've boosted his ego a ton. I'm going to throw his name last time tonight, and then he's done forever. But John's my number 2. I think similar to what you said, he was in a bad position on the Green Tribe. He himself was the one who was like, I really hope a swap happens soon. I really hope something changes soon. And then something changed, and I think his personality and the way he reacted to it with the Green didn't burn any bridges with the Green Tribe, but then he's also coming over with the Yellow Tribe, which is essentially in chaos waiting to happen, and setting himself up for success over there. So I think John has done a good job, whether it be because of himself or just the twist in the game, of putting himself in a really good position compared to where he was.
Nice. Solid pick for John. Addison, what about you?
My number 2 pick is also going to be Carrie. For all the same reasons that you mentioned. She came back from exile with a target. She was able to keep the idol. She was able to keep it a secret that she has an idol. She was able to get traction with the Grace vote and sort of peddle that name out there and make sure that it wasn't her. And then she had the balls to hold on to it at the tribal. I think coming out of this, she looks like a really strong player. I think this is a great week for her. She still has the idol in her hand. So, yeah, Carrie is my number 2 for those reasons.
Awesome. All right. Carrie picking up another 3 points. And so without further ado, I will be starting it off with my number 1 pick of the week and somebody I very much enjoyed seeing play this week, Aubrey. I think Aubrey played a very, very strong episode. She's 19 years old and she is on par with, these people that are much older than her. She's able to relate to them socially. She's connecting with them, whether it's through Dr. Pepper or through conversation. Aubrey is doing a very, very good job. And if you rewatch the episode, Aubrey throws the ring at Charlie, like at the camera. She throws it at him. And, that's not even close to the target. And coming back to camp, Aubrey's like, I did not do good in that challenge. It was tough. My name might be out there. And the minute that she knows that her name is not on the line and she hears Carrie and Grace are online or like their names are out there, a switch flicks in her head and she starts making a move. And she goes for Grace. She targets Adrian. And then she goes to James, tells Carrie, gets her ducks in a line and goes forward. Doesn't go off without a hitch because Adrian, the wild card that he is, threw a vote on Hannah. But Grace wouldn't be gone without Aubrey, I feel like, this episode. So Aubrey gets my 5 points for this week. What about you, Mark? Who's your top?
Not to repeat what you just said, I am officially running the band for Team Aubrey. The number 1 reason is because she did throw the ring in Charlie. He did deserve that. But I think the Dr. Pepper move, that just stood out to me more than anything because it was at a really pivotal time where she needed to start conversations, and like that's such a little thing where it's like we can all just drink water from the well, or oh wow, we actually have something fun now and we're all defeated, sad, and that gets people to open up. And I think she has intimate relationships. You've seen her talking to Adrian, you've seen her talking to Hannah, you've seen her talking to Carrie, and to be able to get that information from Carrie too, or even if she didn't get it fully, but get information from Carrie, turn a vote her way. I think she is doing a phenomenal job at playing a great middle game where her name is not a target either.
Nice. Aubrey is having herself a week. Racked up 11 points in this one episode between the 3 of us. Addison, who is getting your final 5 points for this episode?
All right, I think it's going to shock you guys a little bit. My 5 points is going to go to Adrian. The reason I'm choosing Adrian is because all of the votes have been close. There haven't really been any big moves in this game, and whether he meant to or not, this was a crazy, crazy power move to get Grace out. I said in the beginning of the episode, she had the most momentum going for her after the Drew vote. So I feel like even if it's going to detriment him in the long run, this is the only power move that has been made in the game so far. And I think this is the only move in the game that could be put on a final 3 resume in front of the judges. So for those reasons, I think he made one extreme. I want to make the move was extremely powerful. Well, whether it goes in his favor or not is yet to be seen, but he made the most powerful and most influential decision in this game so far in my mind, and so he's going to get the 5 points.
All right. Adrian, if you're listening, I don't think you expected that one, but congrats on your 5 points for this week.
Is it really throwing a vote if you didn't put a frowny face next to it, though? Like, let's be honest.
Yeah,
it's fair. That is fair. Well, that is a wrap for this episode. Just under an hour. We had a lot to talk about, a lot to cover. So first of all, thank you so much to Mark and Addison for joining me to go over episode 3. It was a blast to sit down and discuss. It was a juicy episode. It's been a juicy season, and I can tell the audience that's tuning in, it just gets better. Episode 4 airing Wednesday at 7:00. It is going to be epic. I feel like it's something that we haven't done before, and I hope you enjoy it. So tune in Wednesday at 7:00 for episode 4. And without further ado, we will be signing off. And I hope everybody has a good night. Addison, Mark, thanks again. And everybody can head back to camp. I think that's going to be my new sign off now. Good
Thank
night.
you, Dom, for all you do.
Thank you, Dom. Have a good night, guys.
Good night.